The massive hall stretched out before Jake Morrison like a crystal cathedral made from frozen starlight. He stood at the center of the chamber while 47 different alien species watched him from their elevated seats. The air felt thick with tension and something else that made his skin crawl. After 3 years as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, Jake had learned to read the mood of this place. Today felt different. Today felt final. High Counselor Zethkalar rose from his throne-like chair at the far end of the chamber. His 4 purple eyes gleamed with what humans might mistake for satisfaction, but Jake knew better. This was hatred wrapped in political ceremony. The tall alien's skin shifted colors as he spoke, a sign of barely controlled emotion. The matter before us today concerns the continued membership of the human species in our ancient and honored council, Zethkalar announced. His voice echoed through translation devices that made his words sound hollow and cold. For 50 standard years we have observed their behavior. We have studied their methods. We have watched their impact on our carefully maintained galactic order. Jake kept his face neutral, but his hands clenched behind his back. He knew what was coming. The signs had been building for months. Trade disputes that seemed designed to fail. Diplomatic missions that were sabotaged from within. Technology-sharing agreements that were suddenly called into question. The Council had been preparing for this moment. Ambassador Morrison, Zethkalar continued, your species stands accused of violations against the natural order of galactic civilization. The charges began to flow like water through a broken dam. The first accusation made Jake's jaw tighten. Humans had developed terraforming technology that worked too fast. Instead of the traditional 1,000-year process that other species used, human atmospheric processors could make a dead world livable in less than a century. The Council called this reckless disregard for natural planetary development. The second charge was even more ridiculous. Human trade agreements were too fair. Instead of maintaining the traditional system where older species held economic power over younger ones, humans insisted on deals that benefited everyone equally. Several newer species had become prosperous through human partnerships, disrupting the established hierarchy that had kept them dependent for millennia. But the third charge was what really revealed the Council's true fears. Humans were sharing advanced technology freely with any species that asked for it. Medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries. Energy systems that could power entire civilizations without depleting resources. Manufacturing techniques that could end scarcity forever. The Council called this dangerous destabilization of technological development protocols. Jake listened to each accusation with growing anger. Every crime they listed was something that made life better for billions of beings across the galaxy. Every violation was an act of generosity or innovation that the Council feared because it threatened their control. Furthermore, Counselor Sylvan of the Hegemony added with a hiss, human exploration fleets have been establishing colonies in unclaimed sectors without proper Council authorization. They have been making contact with species beyond our borders and offering them technology and alliance agreements. That charge at least was true. Human exploration ships had found dozens of civilizations that the Council had deliberately ignored because they were too far away to control effectively. Instead of leaving them alone, humans had offered friendship, trade, and technological assistance. Some of these species were now more advanced than Council members who had spent centuries under artificial limitations. The Velthari delegate spread her gossamer wings and spoke in a voice like wind chimes. The humans represent chaos. They do not respect the wisdom of gradual development. They give dangerous tools to species that are not ready for such power. Jake finally spoke up. Counselor Veltar, which species exactly proved they were not ready? The Kefri, who used our medical technology to cure a plague that was killing millions of their people? The Balani, who used our construction techniques to build cities that house their growing population safely? Or perhaps you mean the Zirak, who used our agricultural methods to end famine on their homeworld? The chamber fell silent for a moment. Several of the newer species representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jake could see the Kefri delegate, a small furry being named Kir-An, watching the proceedings with obvious distress. The Balani representative, a tall insectoid called Hivek, was making the clicking sounds that indicated extreme agitation in his species. The problem, announced Counselor Vorthak of the Ancient Assembly, is not the immediate results of human interference. The problem is the precedent. If every species begins developing and sharing technology without restriction, if every civilization starts helping others advance rapidly, the natural order breaks down. Competition ends. Struggle ends. Growth becomes uncontrolled. Jake almost laughed at the absurdity. Counselor, are you seriously arguing that helping people is wrong? That making life better for billions of beings is somehow a threat to galactic stability? Yes, Zethkalar replied simply. Stability requires predictability. Predictability requires control. Your species refuses to accept control. Therefore, your species is incompatible with civilized galactic society. The vote was swift and brutal. 39 species voted for expulsion. Only 8 voted against, all of them newer members who had benefited directly from human assistance. The Kefri delegate Kiran actually stood up and shouted something in his native language that the translators refused to process, though Jake suspected it was not complimentary to the Council's decision. The human delegation is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council, Zethkalar announced with obvious pleasure. All human installations in Council space must be removed within 7 standard days. Any human vessel found in Council territory after that deadline will be considered an act of war and dealt with accordingly. Jake stood silent for a moment, letting the weight of the decision settle over the chamber. 3 years of careful diplomacy had just been swept away by fear and stupidity. But as he looked around at the alien faces surrounding him, he realized something important. The Council had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. We understand completely, Jake said finally. His voice carried a tone that made several counselors shift nervously in their seats. Humanity will comply with your demands. We will remove all our installations from Council space within the specified time frame. He paused and smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. However, I want to make sure the Council understands what you have just done. You have expelled the one species in this galaxy that was actually trying to help everyone else succeed. You have chosen stagnation over progress, control over cooperation, fear over hope. Jake began walking toward the exit, his small human delegation falling in behind him. In 7 days you will get exactly what you asked for. No more human interference in your affairs. No more disruption of your precious natural order. No more sharing of dangerous technologies that might upset your carefully maintained hierarchies. At the chamber's massive doors, Jake turned back one final time. But remember this moment, counselors. Remember that when humanity offered you partnership, you chose isolation. When we offered you advancement, you chose stagnation. And when the consequences of that choice become clear, remember that you made it freely. Captain Lisa Hayes, commander of the exploration vessel Horizon, was waiting outside the chamber. Sir, what are our orders? Jake's smile became genuine for the first time that day. Get me a secure channel to Admiral Carter and Colonial Command, Captain. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can accomplish when we stop asking for permission. As they walked away from the council chambers, Jake could hear the sound of heated arguments beginning behind the massive doors. Several species were already questioning the wisdom of the expulsion. But it was too late for regrets. The decision had been made, and humanity was about to remind the galaxy why Earth had never actually asked to join the Council in the first place. They had been invited because the Council feared what might happen if humanity remained independent. Now they were about to discover that their fears had been entirely justified. Admiral Susan Carter stood on the observation deck of the massive colony ship New Frontier, watching the greatest evacuation in human history unfold before her eyes. The ship stretched nearly 30 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull gleaming silver against the backdrop of distant stars. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see hundreds of other vessels moving in perfect formation, each one carrying thousands of humans and their alien allies away from Council space. What should have been a humiliating retreat had become something entirely different. As news of humanity's expulsion spread through the galaxy, an unexpected thing happened. Other species began asking to leave with them. Commander Ryan Brooks approached with a data tablet in his hands. His face showed a mixture of exhaustion and excitement that had become common among the evacuation coordinators. Admiral, final numbers are in. We have 847 colony ships, 234 industrial platforms, and 1,200 smaller vessels in the convoy. Total population is 47 million humans. He paused and looked at another section of his report. But there's something else. We also have 23 million non-human refugees who voluntarily left Council space to join us. Admiral Carter turned from the window to face her aide. 23 million aliens chose to abandon their homeworlds to follow us into exile? Yes, ma'am. The Keferi delegation convinced almost their entire species to leave. They said they would rather face uncertainty with humans than live under Council restrictions. 3/4 of the Balani population packed up their hive cities and joined the convoy. Even individual members from established Council species have defected. Carter walked to the holographic display that showed the full scope of their exodus. The convoy stretched across several light years, a river of ships carrying the hopes and dreams of dozens of different species. Each vessel represented someone who had chosen freedom over security, progress over stagnation. Dr. Kevin Moore, the fleet's chief economic analyst, joined the conversation. Admiral, the Council is already feeling the impact of our departure. Human manufacturing techniques accounted for 37% of the galaxy's total industrial output. Without our automated systems and efficiency improvements, they're facing immediate shortages in 17 different sectors. What kind of shortages? Carter asked. Food production has dropped by 40% in systems that relied on human agricultural innovations. Medical supplies are becoming scarce because our biomanufacturing plants produced most of the galaxy's advanced pharmaceuticals. Even basic consumer goods are in short supply because our factories were the most efficient producers in Council space. Lieutenant Dan Foster looked up from his communication station. Ma'am, we're receiving dozens of requests for emergency aid from Council worlds. They're asking us to return and help solve the crisis they created by expelling us. Carter almost laughed at the irony. And our response? Standard diplomatic rejection. We're no longer Council members, so their internal problems are not our concern. The convoy had been traveling for 6 days, following a route that would take them beyond the edge of Council jurisdiction. Their destination was the Outer Rim, a vast region of space that no major power had bothered to claim because it was too far from established trade routes. What the Council saw as worthless empty space, humanity saw as unlimited opportunity. Navigation report, Carter called to the bridge crew. We're approaching the first waypoint, Admiral. Long-range sensors have identified over 200 star systems suitable for colonization within our target zone. The advanced scouts have already established a preliminary base in the Kepler sector. Carter pulled up detailed scans of their new territory. Unlike the crowded, heavily regulated space around Council worlds, the Outer Rim offered something precious: room to grow without asking permission. Star systems with multiple habitable worlds waited to be terraformed. Asteroid belts rich in rare minerals sat untouched. Gas giants perfect for fuel harvesting orbited quietly around young stars. Ma'am, interrupted Lieutenant Foster again. Priority transmission coming in from the Xerian Republic. They're requesting immediate diplomatic contact. The Xerian Republic was one of the galaxy's other major powers, a coalition of species that had always refused to join the Council. They controlled territory on the opposite side of the galaxy and had a reputation for independence and military strength. Put them through to the main conference room, Carter ordered. 20 minutes later, Admiral Carter found herself face-to-face with Ambassador Kretar of the Xerian Republic. The alien was tall and elegant, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the holographic display. His forearms moved gracefully as he spoke, emphasizing his words with fluid gestures. Admiral Carter, the Xerian Republic formally requests alliance negotiations with the Human Colonial Federation. We believe our mutual interests align perfectly. Carter leaned forward. Explain. The Galactic Council has grown corrupt and stagnant. They maintain power through artificial scarcity and technological suppression. Your people represent something different: genuine progress, innovation, and cooperation. We have been watching humanity's development with great interest. What exactly are you proposing? A full military and economic alliance. We offer you access to our gravitational manipulation technology and our defensive networks. In return, we would like to share in your manufacturing innovations and terraforming techniques. Together, we could create a new power structure in this galaxy. Carter exchanged glances with her senior staff. This was happening faster than anyone had expected. Being expelled from the Council was supposed to isolate humanity, but instead it was opening doors that had been closed for decades. We'll need to discuss terms, Carter replied carefully, but humanity is definitely interested. We'll contact you once we establish our new territories. After the transmission ended, Dr. Moore whistled softly. Admiral, if we ally with the Zerion Republic and include all our refugee populations, we're looking at a combined population base of nearly 2 billion beings. Our industrial capacity would rival the entire Galactic Council. Better than rival, Carter corrected. Our technology is already superior in most fields. Give us 5 years of unrestricted development, and we'll surpass anything the Council has ever achieved. She turned back to the viewport where the convoy continued its journey toward the unknown. Behind them, Council space grew smaller and more irrelevant with each passing hour. Ahead lay infinite possibilities. Mr. Brooks, send a message to all convoy commanders. Tell them to prepare for rapid deployment once we reach the outer rim. We're not just looking for new homes, we're building a new civilization, one that doesn't need anyone's permission to exist. The communications officer nodded and began transmitting orders throughout the massive fleet. Around them, the ship hummed with activity as 47 million humans and their allies prepared to prove that exile could become triumph. Admiral, Dr. Moore added quietly, there's something else. Our industrial ships are already producing goods that Council space desperately needs. We could set up trade relationships that would make us wealthy while keeping the Council dependent on our exports. Carter smiled. Not dependent, Doctor. That's their game, not ours. We'll trade fairly with anyone who wants to deal with us honestly. But we'll never again allow anyone to control our destiny. Through the viewport, stars wheeled slowly past as the greatest fleet in human history carried its passengers toward a future that no one could predict. The Council had expelled humanity to preserve their old order, but they had only ensured its eventual replacement. Set course for the outer rim, Carter commanded. Time to show the galaxy what freedom looks like. President Carol Davis stood in the command center of New Geneva Station, watching data streams flow across dozens of holographic displays. 5 years had passed since humanity's expulsion from the Galactic Council, and the transformation of the Outer Rim defied every prediction the experts had made. What was supposed to be empty space filled with struggling refugees had become the most prosperous region in the known galaxy. The space station around her hummed with constant activity. New Geneva served as the administrative heart of the Human Colonial Federation, a gleaming symbol of what could be built when innovation was rewarded instead of punished. Through the massive viewport, she could see the orbital shipyards where hundreds of vessels were under construction, their hulls reflecting the light of 3 artificial suns that human engineers had created to power the growing civilization. Secretary of Development Paul Miller approached with the quarterly production reports. His face showed the kind of exhaustion that came from managing unprecedented growth. Madam President, the numbers are almost impossible to believe. Our manufacturing output has increased by 400% since last year alone. Davis took the data tablet and scrolled through the figures. Every sector showed explosive growth. Automated mining platforms had turned worthless asteroid fields into sources of incredible wealth. Terraforming operations that would have taken the Council centuries were being completed in months using improved atmospheric processors. Agricultural worlds were producing food surpluses that could feed billions. The unrestricted development protocols are working beyond our wildest expectations, Miller continued. Without Council regulations limiting our expansion rate, we're colonizing new systems faster than we can update our star charts. Foreign Minister Amy Watson joined the conversation, carrying her own set of reports. The Alliance benefits are exceeding all projections as well. The Zerion Republic shared their gravitational manipulation technology last month, and our engineers have already improved it by 30%. Meanwhile, our quantum computing advances have revolutionized their communications networks. She paused to highlight a particularly impressive section of her data. The Kefri bioengineering techniques combined with our medical technology have eliminated disease across 17 star systems. The Bolani construction methods merged with our materials. Science have created cities that can house millions in perfect environmental conditions. Director of Intelligence Nathan Green cleared his throat to get their attention. Madam President, we're also receiving very interesting reports from Council Space. Their economy has been in steady decline since our departure. Food shortages are becoming common in sectors that relied heavily on human agricultural innovations. Davis leaned back in her chair. How bad is their situation? Bad enough that several Council species are quietly requesting humanitarian aid. The Ashanti delegation sent an unofficial message asking if we would consider selling them medical supplies. The Velthari are having manufacturing problems that they claim only human expertise can solve. And the Council leadership's response to these requests? Green's expression darkened. Publicly, they're denying that any problems exist. They claim that human departure has strengthened the Council by removing disruptive elements. Privately, our intelligence sources suggest significant internal discord. At least 12 species are openly questioning the wisdom of our expulsion. The door to the command center opened, and Fleet Admiral Peter Ross entered with urgent news. Madam President, we've just completed the Titan Defense Network. 400 orbital defense platforms equipped with quantum disruption cannons are now operational around our core systems. He activated a tactical display showing the defensive arrangements. Any hostile fleet attempting to invade our space would face firepower equivalent to the combined navies of the old galactic powers. Our territory is now effectively impregnable using conventional military tactics. Davis nodded approvingly but held up a cautionary hand. Remember, Admiral, these defenses are meant to protect our independence, not to threaten our neighbors. We're not trying to replace the Council's tyranny with our own. Understood, Madam President. Though I should mention that our exploration fleets have discovered something extraordinary. He switched the display to show a detailed star map of the outer galaxy. We found evidence of ancient ruins in the Kepler Nebula region. Initial analysis suggests technology far beyond anything currently known to galactic civilization. Dr. Helen Cruz, the Federation's chief archaeologist, had been studying the preliminary findings. Madam President, these ruins appear to be from a civilization that existed millions of years before the Council was even formed. Their technology could revolutionize everything we understand about space travel, energy generation, and matter manipulation. More importantly, Admiral Ross added, the ruins are located well beyond Council territorial claims. They have no legal right to interfere with our archaeological operations. Davis walked to the main viewport and looked out at the bustling activity around the station. Cargo ships moved between the orbital platforms like schools of metal fish. Passenger vessels brought new colonists from dozens of different worlds. Construction crews worked on expanding the station's residential sectors to accommodate the growing population. What kind of technology are we talking about? She asked without turning around. Preliminary scans suggest power sources that could supply entire star systems indefinitely, Dr. Cruz replied. Transportation methods that might make our current faster-than-light drives look primitive. Manufacturing techniques that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Foreign Minister Watson frowned. Are we certain the Council doesn't know about these ruins? Their exploration fleets never venture this far from their core territories, Admiral Ross confirmed. They're too focused on maintaining control over their existing space to bother with distant archaeological sites. Davis finally turned back to face her advisors. Begin a full archaeological expedition, but maintain absolute secrecy. If these ruins contain technology as advanced as Dr. Cruz believes, we need to understand it completely before anyone else learns of its existence. She moved to the central planning table where a holographic map showed the current extent of human territory. Red dots marked established colonies. Blue lines showed trade routes. Green symbols indicated defense installations. The display represented 5 years of incredible achievement, but Davis knew it was only the beginning. Continue our expansion programs, she ordered. Strengthen our alliances with the Xerian Republic and our other partners. But remember our core principles. We share our prosperity with anyone willing to work for mutual benefit, and we never force our way of life on others. Secretary Miller looked up from his data tablet. Madam President, there's something else you should know. We're starting to receive immigration requests from individual Council citizens, scientists, engineers, and artists who want to work in an environment where innovation is encouraged rather than restricted. How many requests? Thousands so far, and the number is growing daily. These aren't refugees. They're skilled professionals who see better opportunities in Federation space than in their home systems. Davis smiled at the irony. So the Council is now losing their best people to the civilization they expelled for being too disruptive. It appears so, Madam President. She looked around at her team of advisors, all of them dedicated people who had helped build something unprecedented in galactic history. 5 years ago, the Council thought they were getting rid of a troublesome species that refused to follow their rules. Instead, they created their own replacement. Through the viewport, the artificial suns continued to burn brightly, providing clean energy for a civilization that had learned to thrive without asking anyone's permission. The Council had expelled humanity to preserve their ancient order, but they had only accelerated its destruction. The galaxy is about to learn something important, Davis concluded. Humanity doesn't just adapt to existing systems. We create better ones. Dr. Helen Cruz stood before the massive alien structure that rose from the planet's crystalline surface, like a mountain made of impossible geometry. The ruins in the Kepler Nebula had been calling to humanity for months, their strange signals growing stronger as the archaeological team approached. Now, standing at the base of the ancient monument, she understood why her instruments had been going crazy during the entire journey. The structure was not just a building. It was alive in ways that defied every scientific principle she knew. Surfaces that should have been solid rippled like water when touched. Walls that appeared to be made of stone hummed with energy that registered on sensors designed to detect quantum fluctuations. Most disturbing of all, the entire complex seemed to respond to human presence in ways that suggested intelligence. Dr. Greg Miller, the team's specialist in alien languages, was practically vibrating with excitement as he studied the symbols covering every available surface. Dr. Cruz, the translation matrix is finally making progress. We're calling them the architects based on the way they describe themselves in these inscriptions. They existed roughly 12 million years ago, and their technology makes our most advanced systems look like stone tools. Chief Engineer Bob Taylor had spent the last week trying to understand the alien control systems that were scattered throughout the complex. His usual confidence had been replaced by something approaching awe. These aren't just ruins, they're machines. Massive reality-altering engines that can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. The power source alone defies our understanding of physics. President Davis had arrived personally for this briefing, along with Admiral Ross and the Federation's top scientists. The potential implications of the discovery were too important to trust to long-distance communications. The security concerns alone were staggering. "Show me what you've learned," Davis commanded. Dr. Cruz led the group deeper into the alien structure, where holographic displays flickered to life at their approach. The symbols on the walls began to shift and change, slowly transforming into recognizable human writing. The effect was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. The architects left extensive records, Cruz explained as they walked through corridors that seemed to stretch impossibly far into the distance. They were apparently the galaxy's dominant civilization, until they encountered something they called the stagnation protocol. According to these historical files, they were systematically suppressed by a coalition of older species who feared their rapid technological advancement. Admiral Ross studied the alien displays that showed star maps spanning millions of years. "Are you saying this has happened before? That advanced civilizations have been deliberately held back by jealous neighbors?" "More than that," Dr. Miller replied, pointing to a section of text that glowed brighter than the rest. The architects discovered that the stagnation protocol was not just political. It was built into the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. Older species would actively work to prevent newer ones from developing technologies that might threaten the established order. The parallel to humanity's recent experience was impossible to ignore. Davis felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications. The Council wasn't just being petty when they expelled us. They were following a pattern that's been repeating for millions of years. The architects fought back against the protocol, Cruz continued, but eventually they chose a different path. They decided to transcend the limitations that their enemies tried to impose. These facilities were designed to preserve their knowledge and technology for future civilizations that proved worthy of inheriting it. Engineer Taylor's voice was filled with wonder as he explained what they had discovered in the technical sections. "The architects left us everything, Dr. Davis. Faster-than-light communication systems that work across infinite distances. Matter replication technology that could eliminate scarcity forever. Defensive systems that could protect entire star systems from any conceivable attack." "And weapons?" Admiral Ross asked quietly. Taylor nodded reluctantly. "We found those too. Devices that could destabilize stars, collapse space-time around enemy fleets, even temporarily remove star systems from normal reality. But the architects included strict safeguards in their design. These weapons can only be activated against civilizations that actively try to suppress technological or social advancement in others, President." Davis examined the alien control panels that seemed to pulse with patient intelligence. How do we know we're worthy of this technology? What makes us different from the species that destroyed the architects? We passed their tests without even knowing it, Dr. Cruz replied. Our rapid development despite council restrictions. Our willingness to share technology freely with any species that asked for help. Our resistance to creating artificial hierarchies designed to keep others dependent on us. Every action humanity has taken since reaching the stars has been evaluated by architect monitoring systems. Communications Officer Janet Stone appeared at the entrance to the chamber, her face showing the kind of urgency that meant bad news. Madam President, we're receiving priority transmissions from New Geneva Station. The Galactic Council has just announced a massive naval buildup. They're claiming that human expansion represents an existential threat to galactic stability. Admiral Ross's expression hardened as he processed the implications. How long before they're ready to move against us? Intelligence estimates suggest 6 months before they can assemble a combined fleet large enough to threaten our territory, Stone replied. But they're already moving preliminary forces into position along our borders. President Davis looked around at the alien technology that surrounded them. Machines that had waited 12 million years for the right species to discover them. The architects had faced the same choice that humanity now. Confronted, submit to artificial limitations or fight for the right to grow and develop freely. Begin immediate integration of architect technology with our defense networks, she ordered. But remember our principles. We defend ourselves and our allies, but we don't become conquerors. We're not trying to replace the Council's tyranny with our own. She paused to study the alien symbols that seemed to pulse with approval at her words. The architects left us more than just weapons and tools. They left us a choice. We can use their gifts to defend the right of all species to develop freely. Or we can follow their example and transcend the petty conflicts that have held this galaxy back for eons. Engineer Taylor was already working with the alien control systems, his hands moving across surfaces that responded to human touch after millions of years of waiting. The integration process will take weeks, Madam President, but when it's complete, our defensive capabilities will be beyond anything the Council can imagine. More importantly, Dr. Cruz added, we'll have proof that there are alternatives to the stagnation protocol. Other civilizations can learn from the architect records and break free from the artificial limitations that have kept them from reaching their full potential, President. Davis felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders as she realized what they had discovered. The ruins were not just archaeological treasures. They were the key to breaking a cycle of oppression that had lasted for millions of years. The Council expelled us because they feared what humanity might become, she said quietly. They were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they imagined. We're not going to conquer the galaxy. We're going to liberate it. Deep within the architect facility, ancient machinery began to hum with power as it responded to human commands for the first time in 12 million years. The Council's combined fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human territory like a swarm of angry metal insects. Admiral Zethkalar stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical displays show 1,500 warships representing every major species in the galaxy. It was the largest military force ever assembled in recorded history, and he was confident that humanity's brief rebellion was about to end in complete surrender. Target analysis complete, reported his tactical officer, a young Velthari whose wings trembled with excitement. Human defensive positions detected throughout the outer system. Their fleet numbers approximately 400 vessels. Sir, this engagement will be over within hours. Zethkalar's 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied the enemy positions. The humans had built an impressive network of orbital platforms and defense stations, but conventional weapons could not stand against the overwhelming firepower he commanded. Every species that had ever questioned Council authority would learn from humanity's destruction. On New Geneva Station, President Davis watched the approaching armada through the command center's main viewport. The enemy ship stretched across space like a dark cloud, but her expression remained calm and determined. Around her, the command staff worked with quiet efficiency as humanity prepared to defend everything they had built in the Outer Rim. Admiral Ross, status of the Architect Defense Grid? Online and fully operational, Madam President. All planetary shields are at maximum power levels. The Quantum Disruption Network has been charged and is ready for activation on your command. Davis nodded but held up a cautionary hand. Remember our principles, Admiral. We defend ourselves and our allies, but we do not become conquerors. Today we prove that the galaxy has room for more than one way of thinking. The Council fleet advanced in traditional formation with massive dreadnoughts leading smaller escort vessels. It was an impressive display of conventional military power, but conventions were about to become completely obsolete. Human vessels. "This is Admiral Zeth Kalar of the Galactic Council," came the transmission on all frequencies. "You are in violation of galactic law and threaten the stability of civilized space. Surrender immediately, and we will consider showing mercy to your civilian populations." President Davis stepped forward to respond, her voice carrying across space to reach not just the Council fleet, but monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. "Admiral Zeth Kalar, this is President Davis of the Human Colonial Federation. You are entering sovereign territory without authorization. Withdraw your forces immediately and no harm will come to anyone." Zeth Kalar's laugh was harsh and contemptuous. "Sovereign territory? You are expelled criminals hiding in the darkness beyond civilized space. We are here to restore the natural order that your kind has disrupted." "Very well," Davis replied quietly. "You have made your choice and will face the consequences." She nodded to Admiral Ross, who began activating systems that had not been used for 12 million years. Throughout human space, architect installations came online, their reality-altering technology responding to human commands with eager precision. The ancient machines had been waiting eons for this moment. The first sign that something was wrong came when Council targeting systems began malfunctioning across the entire fleet. Weapons that had functioned perfectly for centuries suddenly refused to lock onto human vessels. Then their defensive shields started flickering like dying light bulbs. Finally, their engines began stuttering and losing power for no reason that any engineer could explain. "What is happening to our ships?" Zeth Kalar demanded of his engineering staff, his voice rising with panic. "Sir, it appears impossible, but the fundamental forces of physics seem to be altered throughout this region of space. Our technology is failing at the quantum level. Every system that depends on normal spacetime mathematics is becoming unreliable." On the human side, ships powered by hybrid human architect technology moved through space with impossible grace and speed. The quantum disruption cannons did not destroy Council vessels, but instead made their weapons and defensive systems incompatible with the local fabric of reality. Council ships found themselves floating helplessly in space where their own technology no longer functioned properly. But the real demonstration of power came when Admiral Ross activated the stellar engineering protocols that the architects had left behind. Throughout the local star system, 3 dead planets suddenly blazed with artificial suns that had been created in seconds using technology beyond Council comprehension. The energy output was visible across several light years and sent a clear message about human capabilities. "Council fleet," President Davis transmitted, "you are witnessing technology that your civilization abandoned millions of years ago. The architects left these gifts for species capable of growth, cooperation, and genuine progress. We do not want war, but we will not accept domination ever again." Admiral Zeth Kalar stared at his tactical displays showing impossible readings that his instruments could not explain. His fleet was completely helpless, suspended in space where the basic laws of physics had been rewritten to favor human technology. For the first time in his long military career, he felt genuine fear. "This cannot be real," he whispered to himself. Dr. Cruz's voice joined the transmission, broadcasting on frequencies that reached every inhabited system in the galaxy. "Admiral, what you are seeing is the legacy of the architects, a civilization that transcended the limitations your ancestors imposed 12 million years ago. They left this technology for species capable of breaking free from artificial restrictions." President Davis continued the explanation that would reshape galactic politics forever. "The Galactic Council has maintained power through artificial scarcity and deliberate technological suppression. The architects left safeguards against exactly this kind of stagnation. Humanity did not develop this technology through conquest. We inherited it by proving ourselves worthy through our actions." Across the Council fleet, individual ships began powering down their weapons as crews realized the futility of their situation. Many had heard the broadcasts and were questioning orders that seemed increasingly pointless. "You have a choice," Davis offered. "Return to your territories and continue the old ways of control and limitation, or join us in building something better. The architect technology can eliminate scarcity, end disease, and open pathways to advancement that your people have never imagined. But it comes with conditions. No more artificial hierarchies, no more suppression of developing species, no more maintenance of poverty to preserve political power. Admiral Zethkalar found his voice after several long minutes of stunned silence. And if we refuse your generous offer? Then you return home and explain to your people why you chose stagnation over progress. The architect defenses will protect our territory and our allies, but we will not pursue you. Unlike the Council, humanity does not believe in forced compliance with our way of life. Hours later, as the Council fleet began its humiliating retreat, President Davis stood on the observation deck watching ships from 17 different Council species request asylum in human space. The old order was crumbling, not through military conquest, but through the simple demonstration that better alternatives were possible. Madam President, Admiral Ross reported, we are receiving diplomatic requests from 47 star systems. The Velthari delegation wants to discuss what they call alternative governmental structures. Even some of the core council worlds are asking about access to architect technology. President Davis smiled as she watched the artificial suns continue to burn brightly in the distance. Begin setting up diplomatic conferences for any species that wants to participate. But remember the architect. Conditions. This technology only functions for civilizations truly committed to genuine progress and cooperation. She paused to watch a group of council ships, formally requesting permission to join the human convoy that was heading back to Federation space. We are not replacing the Council's rules with our own, she concluded. We are teaching the galaxy to write new rules together, rules that benefit everyone instead of preserving the power of a few. Outside the viewport, the artificially created suns blazed with promise, beacons of change that were visible across the galaxy. Humanity had been expelled for being too disruptive, too innovative, too unwilling to accept artificial limitations. They had responded by becoming something unprecedented, a civilization that inherited the power to reshape reality itself and chose to use it not for conquest but for liberation.